terms of the outcomes I need to keep track of until they're finished, and the action steps that I need to define so that I know how to allocate resources and move toward closure. How do I build in some sort of an organization system so I see all of the appropriate things at the right time in the right place? And how do I make sure that I have a review and reflection process that can evaluate that inventory on an ongoing basis or as needed? So that then when stage 5, when I engage, when I decide to actually do something, that comes from a place of trust, not from a place of hope. The big change for most everybody, and I mean 99.9% of the people that I come across and work with professionally, is making those decisions on the front end instead of the back. In other words, everybody's going to decide what to do next about the important things in your life, and even the unimportant things, but the question is when and why. And I can guarantee that for most of the people that I know, most of the next action decisions are actually made when the heat on the situation forces people to, instead of when the thing is first on their mind and on their radar. And that is a huge paradigm change to shift from one to the other, where you begin to take the responsibility to make executive decisions on the front end instead of the back, when things are on your radar. But I think, I understand that because most people, I don't think, have ever had a reference point about what it's like to truly have all of that angst-producing stuff off your mind. So that's what I did, that's what Frodi's done, that's what people who've begun to implement this methodology have done, is actually get to the place and the space that says, folks, it's available. Now here's the funny thing, you actually don't have to like your life to get it off your mind. What you have to do is you have to capture the stuff that's pulling on your attention, clarify and decide the specific meaning about outcome and action that's embedded in that. You must organize that in some sort of a cohesive way that your mind trusts you will then engage with at some appropriate timing in order to be able to get that off your mind. There's an inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done. So a lot of my later work and my thinking right now, one of my favorite, thoughts of the day is that if you don't pay appropriate attention to what has your attention, it will take more of your attention than it deserves. So what's different about GTD than most of the other time management and organization and prioritization and productivity kinds of programs, most of those programs try to get you to start with where you should be and what you should be doing and what you should be thinking about. What GTD does, as Frodi says, is we start with where you are. So if cat food is on your mind, let's not start with your life purpose. Let's start with cat food. If you try to think about your strategic plan or your life purpose and cat food is on your mind and you have not given it the appropriate attention, then you're really going to be creating more frustration than you are productivity. So let's start with cat food, and ultimately we'll find out whether cat food is in alignment with your life purpose. But that's a whole lot easier and a whole lot more meaningful as a self-development process to start with where you are, get control of that, get successful with that, and then move on to the next level. Because once you handle what has your attention, you'll then find out what really has your attention. Which, by the way, when you handle that, you'll find out what really has your attention. Which, by the way, when you handle that, you'll find out what really has your attention. And anyone who starts to get involved in the GTD process, though it sounds and looks pretty simple on the front end, will discover that you just bit into an onion that has an infinite number of layers to it. So that's kind of the cool thing about this. Much like the martial arts, the better you get, the more you realize there's a whole nother level that you can get to. Me too. I am a fellow student with all of this. But you don't have to go very far to know exactly where to start. All you have to do is start paying attention to actually what has your attention now. I'd be willing to bet that most all of you in the room, now I can't see your hands because on screen I just see my picture. Gee, that's nice. But if I could see all of you, I'm just curious. Raise your hand if you have had your mind go somewhere else since you've been sitting down in that room, since Frode and the other people have started talking that had nothing to do with what was going on in that room. How many of you had your mind go off somewhere else?
Doesn't matter.
I'm willing to bet that there's probably at least one or two of you who raised your hand. Oh, there you are. Hi, folks. Now I can see you. Thank you. Now, guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. And if where your mind went was doing creative developmental thinking down track your brain has never been before, I'd say, great. That's what your mind is good for. As a matter of fact, that's all of what GTD is about, is getting you to free up to do that. Don't pay any attention to Frode. Stay where you are. That's a good place to be. But that's probably not where most of you went. If your brain left, there's a very big difference between placing your attention and having your attention grabbed. Start to notice the difference. And when your attention is grabbed, which I will suggest is for the majority of you what happened, then all it means is that you have not yet put the appropriate attention on that thing. And there's a dumb little wonderful servant part of you that keeps feeding it back to you until you do that. So you don't have to go very far to understand and to know where to apply what Frode was talking about and what the GTD process is about. You just have to start to pay attention to what has your attention and then apply the appropriate attention to it. And that basically is the GTD thought process. And in a way, you know, what we deliver when we do work in organizations is an installed thought process. And it's a little embarrassing because most people don't like to admit that they need help in training about how to think. Well, the funny thing is, it's the most bright, sensitive, creative, intelligent people who are the biggest procrastinators that constipate their own mind faster than anybody else. Because if you start to think about something and you don't know how to do it perfectly, there's a part of you that says, oh my gosh, in half a second, there's 6 million things that I have to do to think about to make it right, and I don't have the energy to do all that thinking because I just don't have that energy right now, so then you don't think at all. And now that thing owns you instead of you owning it. What GTD is a way to tease out the thinking process so you get that as simple as possible, as quick as possible, with as little psychic energy as possible to apply to those things. And once you do that, then that stuff gets off your mind. It doesn't mean it's finished. It doesn't even mean you particularly like it, but it does mean that your brain and your psyche is now freed up. The real power of GTD is to free you up for spontaneous, creative mess making. And Frode, I think you said that very well. You know, I love to make creative messes. That's my most productive state. But if you start from a messy state, you don't have that freedom. So whenever I'm not doing anything else, I'm cleaning everything and backlog all up to zero, applying the GTD process so that when the next surprise comes toward me, and it's coming, just like it's coming toward you, when it hits, I don't want 2,000 unprocessed emails in my psyche or in my computer. I want that at zero. That makes it a lot easier for me to then take in that new stuff, recalibrate, refocus, and be on, and taking those things not as the downside stuff, but as new opportunities. So I'll stop boring you again with this stuff, but again, you know, I kind of can't stop talking about it. I'm delighted to have a receptive audience there, and especially in a place as gorgeous as Norway. Hopefully the dollar is working a little better now than it was when I was there before, so I don't have to mortgage my house to take the cab in from the airport. But
I don't know, David.
In any case, it was definitely worth it. So I'm going to turn this back over to Morten. Is this yours? Or Frode, I'll turn this back over to you guys. Thanks for listening to me, and let's all stay in touch.
Thank you, David. I was going to say to those of you in the U.S., I did pay $2 for a Diet Coke in the grocery store the other day. So, and I grew up here, and I'm still in shock. Morten, do you want to take us on to the rest of the event? Thank you very much.